Welcome to Drive the Daf, clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Eruvin Daf Yud Aleph takes us to our first new Mishnah in the Masechta, after the one which led off the Masechta. Near the end of the Daf, we will get to the second Mishnah in the Masechta. Until then, we're going to discuss primarily the halachas of Etzuras HaPesach. That's where you're making a door frame with the intent of it counting as a wall. We know that the halacha is that we've seen that a doorway counts as a wall. So if you put up a door frame, that just means two side posts and a crossbeam across the top of them. That is an apparent doorway, and therefore that counts as a wall. Now, the Gemara is going to discuss this halacha. First of all, where it works in what situations. We'll have two questions. Does it work in a situation where the space you're trying to close is wider than 10 amos? We've seen that in the Mishnah. And the other question is, does it work if it's the majority of the wall? Can the majority of a wall, or even the entire wall, be a Tzuras HaPesach, a doorway, and not solid wall? Then the Gemara will get into exactly how it's shaped, the side posts, how they look, the crossbeam, how it's attached, and all those halachas. Then we'll get to the Mishnah, which will go back to the halachas of closing a mavoi, and tell us what exactly you need to close the mavoi, the machokas Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, which we've seen quoted. Okay, so first of all, we had seen in our Mishnah, our first Mishnah, that if the open side of a mavoi is wider than 10 amos, so you can't fix it with just a lechi or a kaira, with a crossbeam or a side post. You have to actually have an entire door frame, a tzuras ha-pesach. So the Gemara's question is as follows: does the tzuras ha-pesach work if the mavoi is also too tall? We'd seen that if there are two potential problems with a mavoi, it could be either too wide or too tall for a regular lechi or kaira to work. And we had said, now we're saying that a tzuras ha-pesach works even if it's too wide. Well, does a tzuras ha-pesach also work if it's too tall? In the same vein, the Gemara asks, we also had something that works for a mavoi that's too high. What's that? That's if you have a fancy crossbeam. It draws the eye. You can see it even though it's very high. And amaltera. Does that work even if it's too wide? Meaning each one of these special rules that works when it's a over large, wide, or tall opening, does it work for the other one? Does it work in the opposite scenario? So the Gemara says, well, one of these I can answer simply. And that's it. I have a brayso that clearly says that if you have a mavoi that's too tall, you can make a tzuras ha-pesach and that'll fix it. So that we know. Question is the other one. Can you make a fancy crossbeam and that'll help if it's too wide? So the Gemara tries to figure this one out from a brayso. The Gemara is going to reject this. The brayso says as follows. Listen carefully to the language here. If you have a mavoi which is higher than 20 amos tall, meaning the crossbeam on top is more than 20 amos tall, you got to lower it. If it's more than 10 amos wide, you have to shrink the width. And if it has a tzuras ha-pesach, you don't have to shrink the width. Now, then it adds, and if it has a fancy crossbeam, you also don't have to shrink it. So the Gemara says it sounds like it's going on the last case where it's too wide. It seems that the fancy crossbeam also works for the wide. The Gemara says no, that's not what it was referring to. It was referring to the first half, the first halacha, that it works when it's too high. It's not referring to the end where it's too wide. Okay. Now the Gemara notes that not everybody agrees that a tzuras ha-pesach works for a 10 amma, for a wider than 10 amma space. The Gemara is going to show that Rav does not agree to that, and even Rav Yechon later on the Daf will not agree to it. So we see it with this incident. Rav Yehuda was teaching Chia, the son of Rav, and Rav was around, and Rav Yehuda said over this Mishnah, and he said that if the opening of the mavoi is more than 10 amos, you can fix it with a tzuras ha-pesach, and Rav said, no, tell him that you can't fix it with a tzuras ha-pesach, because Rav holds that a tzuras ha-pesach does not work for that. So now the Gemara says, Rav Yosef says you can learn another halacha out of here. There are two scenarios, says Rav Yosef, in which a tzuras ha-pesach is potentially not effective. One of them is if it's too wide, more than 10 amos. That's what Rav just said. Another similar thing is where the majority of the enclosure is tzuras ha-pesachs. it's not solid wall. The Tzuras HaPesach itself is more than the actual solid wall that's there. Now, there's a Machokas Yishanim if that means that it's more of each wall, the majority of each wall in the enclosure is a Tzuras HaPesach and is otherwise open, or if it's referring to where the entire enclosure taken all together is majority Tzuras HaPesach and not solid wall. But either way, those are the two scenarios in which a Tzuras HaPesach is doubtful, and Rav Yosef says you can compare the two, just like Rav is saying that it doesn't work if it's wider than 10 amas. He would also say that it doesn't work if it's the majority of the wall or enclosure. The Gemara says not necessarily, the two halachas are not comparable. And I will show you that the halacha of majority being Tzuras HaPesach is an easier halacha to deal with than the halacha of too wide. Where do you see that? It's about the halacha of the wells, which we saw previously. Right, when the Olei Haregel, the people traveling to Yerushalayim, stopped to rest for Shabbos, they had a problem. They couldn't get water because the wells where the water was contained within were a Rishos Yachid, and the ground around it was a Rishos Harabim. So they couldn't get water out of the wells. In order to do that, Chazal said that you can set up a simple enclosure which consisted of just 4 corner pieces on 4 corners around the well. Even though it was majority open space, you just have corner pieces, they still allowed you to do that. They were lenient on that halacha. However, according to Rabbi Meir, it was not okay if the spaces were more than 10 amas apart. That's a machlokas if they could be 13 and a third amas apart. But Rabbi Meir said that they cannot be more than 10 amas apart. So you see that the two halachas, the halacha of 10 amas apart and the halacha of majority open space, those aren't the same, because as far as wells are concerned, not everybody agrees that the halacha of 10 amas apart is cancelled. But the halacha of majority open space is cancelled. Therefore, that's more lenient halacha. So it could be that Rav, who says that a Tzuras HaPesach doesn't work for a 10 amma space, would say that a Tzuras HaPesach does work even if it's majority that space, that open Tzuras HaPesach space, and not fully closed. Okay, now the Gemara wants to bring a proof to this halacha that the open space, that you can't have majority Tzuras HaPesach open space as opposed to walls. More quotes a brisa which says that these walls, if it's majority windows and doorways, windows meaning what halachically counted as a doorway because the wall under the window is less than 10 tefachim tall, so it counts as if it's open all the way to the ground. So this brisa says that it's permitted as long as it's majority closed. And we're says, what do you mean? It just says majority windows. And we're saying, no, we mean that it has a lot of windows, but it still has to be majority actual solid wall. It can't be majority window or doors. So Gemara says it's not necessarily proof to this halacha that you can't have majority Tzuras HaPesach. So Rav Kahana says that these are talking about where the windows and the doors were made improperly. It's not a proper Tzuras HaPesach. And here we get our first halacha about the actual shape of the Tzuras HaPesach. It can't be what's called Pischei Shim'ai. What are Pischei Shim'ai? So the Gemara has a machlokas what they are. It's Rav Rechumi against Rav Yosef. It's a rough opening. The question is, what's rough about the opening? One says that it means that there's no lintel. There is no top. It just goes straight up to the sky. The other one says that there is no door frame. There's no side post. You just kind of smashed out the hole in a wall, and that's what you're using as a door or as a window. As a machlokes rishonim here, if that means that the edges are rough, the bricks are still protruding unevenly, that's what Pischei Shim'ai is defined as. Or even if the bricks are a nice smooth wall, the hole was cut smooth and square, but still there's no actual doorpost there, that would be a problem. That's according to the Ritva. Okay. Now, the Gemara now brings Rav Yochanan, and the Gemara says that Rav Yochanan also holds like Rav, that a Tzuras HaPesach doesn't work if the gap you're trying to use to close is wider than 10 amas. Where do you see that? The Gemara says that Rav and Baravada, said in Rav Yitzchak, was an incident that happened with somebody from the valley of Beis Chorsan, who did the following thing. He wanted to enclose an area. He stuck 4 poles in the ground, and he stretched the vines between the 4 poles, so he had a Tzuras HaPesach all around on all 4 sides. And this incident was brought before the Chachamim, and they said this is good as far as Hilchas Kilayim. It counts as a wall as far as Hilchas Kilayim, and therefore you're allowed to plant grapevines on one side of this makeshift wall and vegetables on the other side, even close to each other. And the question was, does it also work for Hilchos Shabbos? Does it count as walls and Shabbos you can carry within it? Rish Lakish said yes. 4 Tzuras HaPesach is fine. And Rav Yochanan said, no, it doesn't count for Shabbos. So you see that Rav Yochanan did not allow this. Now the Gemara says, why did he not allow this? The Gemara considers no possibility that the problem over here is that it's majority open, because we already rejected that. So that's not an issue here. The other potential issue is that the vines were put on the side of the side posts, near the top, but not on top of the side posts, what we call echim and atzad. The Gemara assumes that can't be the issue either. Gemara says, therefore, the issue must be that the openings, the spaces between the posts that he stuck in the ground were more than 10 amas, and that's why Rav Yochanan says it's no good. Gemara says, no, not necessarily. It could be that it was installed on the side, and Rav Yochanan is saying that it's no good if it's installed on the side, and Rish Lakish is saying no, that it is good even if it's installed on the side near the top. Gemara now says these two opinions of Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish are both contradicted by a different discussion between Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Each one contradicts what he says here, and the only way to resolve it is going to end up bringing us back to our original understanding of what the case was, that the issue wasn't that it's on the side of the post. The issue was that it was greater than 10 amas wide. What's that contradictory discussion? So we have a very similar case. We have 4 posts stuck in the ground, and this time the vine that's stretched across the top is a braided vine, which doesn't really make a halachic difference. And here we have different halachas. Rish Lakish says, this time in the name of his Rabbi Yehuda bar Chanina, he says that this is good for Hilchos Kelayim, but it's no good for Hilchos Shabbos, contradicting what he said earlier that it is good for Hilchos Shabbos. So the Gemara says that's not a problem. Here he's not saying his own opinion, he's saying his Rebbe's opinion. Fine, but Rav Yochanan contradicts himself also. Earlier he said that it's no good for Hilchos Shabbos, but it is good for Hilchos Kelayim. Here he says it's not even good for Hilchos Kelayim. So why would that be? Now, how do we resolve this contradiction? Why would Rav Yochanan say in one case that it works for Hilchos Kelayim, in one case it does not work for Hilchos Kelayim? The resolution must be that in one case the vine is stretched across the top, and therefore it's a good source of Pesach, at least for Hilchos Kelayim, and in one case it's stuck on the side, and therefore it's no good even in Hilchos Kelayim. Comes out that in the situation where Rav Yochanan said that it's good for Hilchos Kelayim, it is stretched across the top. So then how come it's no good for Hilchos Shabbos? It must be because it's more than 10 amas wide. And you see that Rav Yochanan holds that whereas more than 10 amas wide, it is no good for Hilchos Shabbos, like I was trying to tell you earlier. So Gemara says, no, I'll really tell you a different shot. I'll really tell you that in both cases, in all these situations, it's stretched across the side. And when it's stretched across the side, it's no good in Hilchos Shabbos. The difference between here and there, why Rav Yochanan says that it's good for Hilchos Kelayim, but it's no good for Hilchos Kelayim, is in one case it's more than 10 amas wide, in one case it's less than 10 amas wide. Where it's less than 10 amas wide, it's good for Hilchos Kelayim, and when it's more than 10 amas wide, it's no good for Hilchos Kelayim. But both situations are talking about where it's stretched across the side, and in Hilchos Shabbos there's no difference between 10 amas wide. So Gemara says, well, how do you know that as far as Hilchos Kelayim, there's a difference between 10 amas wide or not 10 amas wide? We never saw such halacha. Gemara says, yes, we did. We did see it. It's in a different conversation between Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Rav Yochanan said to Rish Lakish that there was an incident that Rav Yeshua ben Karcha went to visit Rav Yochanan ben Nuri to learn Hilchos Kelayim, and he found him, and he was sitting and he was learning between 2 trees. So Rav Yeshua stretched the vine between the trees, and he said, Rebbe, can I plant on one side of this vine, can I plant grapes, on the other side vegetables? He said, it depends if the space is 10 amas wide or not. If it's 10 amas or less, then you're allowed to. If it's more than 10 amas, then you're not allowed to. So Gemara says, what was the situation over here? If it's talking about where it was on the side, so then this makes sense. If, however, the vine ran over the top, it can't be, because we have a brisa that explicitly says that if a Tzuras HaPesach goes over the top, it works for Hilchos Kelayim, even if it's more than 10 amas. So that can't be the case over here. So here we have a conclusive proof that as far as Hilchos Kelayim goes, if it's over the top, then there's no difference between 10 amas or not 10 amas. The halacha is that it counts as a good wall. If it goes along the side, that's where there's a difference between 10 amas and less, between the 10 amas and more, and that is the difference between the two halachas that Rav Yochanan said. That's why Rav Yochanan seemed to say contradictory things. One case was referring to where it was 10 amas, and one case is referring to where it was more than 10 amas. Okay, now once we've said the halacha that the cross beam of the Tzuras HaPesach has to be on the top and it cannot be on the side, according to Rav Chizda at least, the Gemara brings a few more halachas about what the Tzuras HaPesach has to look like or be like, and the Gemara brings another one from Rav Chizda. The Tzuras HaPesach has to be strong enough to be able to have a door attached to it. It could be even a very light door, like a door made out of straw, but some kind of door has to be able to be attached to it. You have to actually have a hole for a hinge. Hole for hinge means the hinge was in the days of Chazal, which was just a peg stuck in the floor or the threshold, and in the lintel on the top, and then the peg was stuck in the door as well, so that it could turn on the peg. So it has to have the hole for the peg. It doesn't actually have the peg or the door, but it has to have the hole. That is a halacha that was said by Rav Avia. He explained that it's referring to the hole. Then where it says that Rav Acha, the son of Rav Avia, met Talmidim of Rav Ashi, and he asked him, did Rav Ashi say anything about what the Tzuras HaPesach needs to look like? He was asking for halacha, and they said, no, he didn't say anything. He didn't say your father's halacha, and we don't know what he holds on the subject. Now the Gemara says, what is the basic structure? What is Tzuras HaPesach? It's described as follows: a side post on one side, a side post on the other side, and a cross beam across the top. That's what you gotta have. Next, the Gemara wants to know, do the side posts have to reach all the way to the cross beam, or are they able to stop short of the cross beam and will halachically view them as they're extending? The Gemara says Rav Nachman says they don't have to reach all the way up. Rav Yosha says they do. It was the incident that happened that Rav Nachman built an Eruv for the Reish Galusa, who was the governor of the Jewish community in exile. And Rav Nachman built the Eruv in such a way that it was in accordance with his opinion. But now Rav Sheshes is, and it did not reach the side posts, did not reach all the way up to the cross beam. Rav Sheshes saw it, and he told his servant, his aide, Rav Gada, to rip them out. He did so. And Reish Galusa's men threw him in jail for destroying Reish Galusa things. So Rav Sheshes went and he stood at the gate and he said, Gada, come out to me, Gada, come out to me. And when the men heard that it was Rav Sheshes' order that Rav Gada was following to rip out the side posts, so they let him go. And then he went out. So Gemara says that Rav Sheshes then met Rabbi Bar Shmuel, and he asked him, what can you tell me about Hilchos Tzuras HaPesach? So he said, I can tell you something based on a machlokes and Hilchos Mezuzah. A mezuzah is only necessary on a doorway that's at least 10 tvachim high by 4 tvachim wide. So I have a machlokes between Rav Meir and the Chachamim about an archway, where the space in the archway doesn't fit a box 10 tefachim by 4 tefachim. The space of the arch is not large enough to fit a 10 tefach high by 4 tefach wide frame. It is, however, high enough to fit a 3 tefach high by 4 tefach wide frame. So that's a machlokes. Rabbi Meir says it's chayv and mezuzah, because we halachically view the space in the curved arch as if it's carved out, and therefore we halachically extend the side walls of the arch all the way up to some row of bricks that's 10 tvachim high, and we view the frame. We can halachically view the frame, even though it's not the actual frame of the archway, but the bricks are there, and you have a space that's more than 4 tvachim wide and 3 tvachim high. So I can choose bricks of my own in the doorway, and that's my door frame, and I can halachically view it as if it reaches, even if it doesn't actually reach, because you have the bricks, you have other bricks of the archway in the way, I can ignore those. The Chachamim, however, say no, you have to at least have a frame that fits in there of 10 tvachim high and 4 tvachim wide. Otherwise it's not enough. I don't halachically say that it reaches up to the top on its own. So Gemara says, so you see from this opinion here that you can view side posts halachically as if they reach all the way up, even if they do not. Rabbi Meir says I can carve out the things that are in the way and view them as if they're not there. The Chachamim say, no, you can't carve them out. They are still there. But everybody seems to agree that even if it doesn't actually reach all the way up, you're allowed to view it as if it reaches. So Gemara said, right, because if it's if a frame fits that's 10 tefachim high by 4 tefachim wide, the Chachamim agree that that's okay. But you still have intervening bricks between the side posts and the crossbeam on the top. So you don't really have a door frame. You have to view it as if it connects, even though it doesn't actually connect. So the Gemara says, so this contradicts Rav Shesh's halacha, because he said that it has to connect actually. So Rav Shesh said, do me a favor, don't tell the people in the Reish Kalusa about this halacha. Okay, so this ends the Gemara. Now we start the next Mishnah, which discusses what you need to fix a mavoi entrance. Again, we're referring to a mavoi, that is, there are two types of mavois. There's ones that are closed on 3 sides and open on the 4th side, which is the narrow side to Rishus Harabim, and there's ones that are open on both ends. And the Mishnah begins discussing what you need to make it permitted to carry within the mavoi itself. So we have a 3-way machlekes. Beis Hillel says you need either a lechi or a kaira, either a side post or a crossbeam. Beis Shammai says you need both a lechi and the kaira. Rabbi Elazar says 2 lechis is enough, one on each side of the opening of the mavoi. Now the Gemara adds here that a Talmud said to Rabbi Akiva, the name Rabbi Shmuel, that the whole machlekes is if the open side of the mavoi that you're trying to fix is more than 4 amas wide, meaning it's between 4 and 10 amas. If, however, it's less than 4 amas, Beis Shammai will agree that you could have just a lechi or a kaira, a side post or a crossbeam. You don't have to have both. Gemara says Rabbi Akiva disagreed. He said, no, the machlekes is even in a smaller opening. Okay, now the Gemara, first of all, is assuming that this was referring to a mavoi mefulish, which is open on both ends. The Gemara says this doesn't fit. We had a machlekes earlier where they needed source of Pesach on one end, or you need to have doors on one end, or doors on either end. But nobody said you just have a lechi or a kaira and a kaira. Nobody said that. So the Gemara says, no, this is talking about a mavoi sasum, where it's closed on 3 sides, it's only open on the 4th side. The Gemara says if that's the case, so that means that when Beis Shammai are requiring a lechi and a kaira, that sounds like they're trying to say that you need to have a 4th wall. Does that mean to say that Beis Shammai hold that it's not considered Rishus Yachid until you have 4 walls on all 4 sides? You have to have a wall. 3 walls is not a Rishus Harabim, is not a Rishus Hayachid Midaraisa. So Gemara says no. Rishus Hayachid is Midaraisa even if it has only 3 walls. And therefore, were you to throw an object from Rishus Harabim into an enclosure that has only 3 walls, you'd be violating an Issur Daraisa. Now, therefore, Midaraisa, you should be allowed to carry within an area that has only 3 walls. The Rabbanan said you have to do something to make a 4th wall. You have to have a lechi and kaira together. That makes a 4th wall. The Gemara has the same discussion about Beis Hillel, just 1 wall less. The Gemara says Beis Hillel didn't say you have an issue if you have only 2 walls. Does that mean to say that Beis Hillel only require 3 walls? So, but 2 walls, according to Beis Hillel, is not a Rishus Hayachid? Meaning from the fact that Beis Hillel did not allow you on a mavoi sasum, which is only 2 walls, it did not allow you to just put up a lechi kaira there. Does that mean that Beis Hillel hold that a 2-walled enclosure is not a Rishus Harabim, is not a Rishus Hayachid Midaraisa? You need to have 3 walls to be a Rishus Hayachid Midaraisa? The Gemara says no. Rishus Hayachid Midaraisa is even if you have only 2 walls. If you throw from Rishus Harabim into Rishus Hayachid, there's only 2 walls, you're violating the Issur Daraisa. However, the Chazal said in order to carry within it, you need to have a 3rd wall, and that's why you have to have a lechi or a kaira to fix it, or if it's a mavoi mefulish, then you have to have more than that, depending on which opinion you.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.